little off the street hamburger joint where like you couldn't even go inside. It was like one of those ones where you stand up to get your burgers and fries. Now the burgers were okay, but I'm already like, this is not what I meant by anything. So then he's like, what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I don't know. We can do whatever, which was also a bad thing to say. I should have learned my lesson the first time. Apparently I didn't. And so this man decided, and this, he took me all throughout the 80s and 90s in his van. And I should have known something was up when he had a van, but with tinted windows. He took me all up and down the 80s and 90s selling weed out his car. And I was like, this is not what I meant by whatever at all. And so then at the last stop, at the point, like I was like, I didn't even know what to do. I'd never experienced something like this in my whole life. I lived a pretty sheltered life. I mean, I grew up in Oakland, but my parents pretty much they sheltered me. And so this was my first experience of anything like this. And so he tells me to go sit in the not the back seat, but the seat that wasn't the front seat, because somebody gets in the car. So this dude gets in the car and he's like, man, I want, whatever. And he was like, you still owe me a dub. And in my head, I'm like, what's a dub? So they get into this dairy contest and I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to die tonight. So, me with no filter, I speak up and I'm like, so I really don't want to die tonight. And they both looked back at me and realized that I was still in the car. And thank God I was looking cute. So I guess they both decided to spare my life. So the guy that I was with was like, I'll holler at you later. And the other guy got out the car. And he was like, so what do you want to do next? And I was like, yeah, I just want to go home. So he took me home, and he was like, so do you got any friends? And I was like, I wouldn't be a friend if I showed them to you. So he took me home, but I told him to drop me off like a block down the street. And I went home, and I ripped up his number, and that was my unsafe experience.
Wasn't that a scene from New Jack City or something? I said, I think I remember that scene in New Jack City back in the day.
Oh, well, I don't know. That was something that I actually experienced and lived in real time.
Well, I do have one story I can share before we go on our break. There was one time when I was 19, I had just moved out on my own. So I was like, oh, freedom, because my parents were so guarded. So I used to do things like leave my house at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning just to go and grab some food from a diner that was open 24 hours a day. Now, I didn't live in like the worst areas, but it wasn't necessarily the best areas in Massachusetts. So I lived close to downtown, but not, that close enough. And I lived actually near 2 strip clubs, which is probably why I shouldn't have been out at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I was walking to get some pancakes out of all things. I really wanted some either blueberry or chocolate chips. So I was leaving my apartment. I was walking on the street, and I heard someone behind me asking me, where is so-and-so? Now, I'm bad with directions, so I always tell people I don't know. So he's asked me where's whatever street it is, and I said, oh, I don't know, and I'm still walking, and I never looked behind me. So he's like, well, where's downtown? Now I'm like, we're kind of downtown. So I'm like, I don't know. And, I just say I don't know because I'm like, now you're just pulling at straws. He's asking me whatever. So he's like, you don't know where downtown is? And I'm thinking to my head, you don't know where downtown is? So I hear the footsteps getting walking faster. So I just start running. And so I'm just running and running and running. And then I look behind me eventually, and the person's gone. So I'm like, I at that point, I ran around in a circle, and I went right back home, and I never left out my house again at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, with that situation, I just learned to maybe not leave out so late in the dark.
Wait a minute, you said you learned what? Wait a minute, you said you learned what?
Not to leave out so late in the dark, because my neighborhood wasn't the worst neighborhood, but it wasn't the best. But I definitely shouldn't have been out at 3 o'clock in the morning getting pancakes.
So you don't do that anymore?
I'm not gonna say I don't do that anymore. I just pick and choose where I do it at.
I just asking. Okay.
On that note, we're going to take a break, and when we return, we're going to continue with our safety check, and we're actually going to go over 4 safety tips that we have found. So we're going to take a break now, and we're going to return shortly. Hello, this is Corinne, and here is today's training news break. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson purchased the XFL for $15 million today. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson purchasing the XFL is a cause for excitement. At least it is indefinitely more interesting than an anonymous hedge fund manager emerging as the face of the bankrupt Spring Football League. But Johnson off-field star power will mean little to the XFL if they can't find better talent. Low-scoring games and sloppy play will continue to repel the masses regardless of who's sitting in the league's executive suite. Johnson is the head of a group that agreed to purchase the XFL for $15 million, according to a news release. His investors include his ex-wife and business partner, Danny Garcia, along with Redbird Capital Partners. The XFL declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy on April the 13th, citing the financial hardships of the coronavirus pandemic. Now that's it for today's training news story. Back to you.
Real Girlfriends Across America is on Patreon. Please follow us at patreon.com/Real Girlfriends Across America. We strive to bring good content, and we appreciate every show of support. Your donation could make a world of difference. Thank you for listening and all that you do.
Thank you guys for sticking while we take those breaks. And we are back with our today's topic, which is safety check. And I'm going to continue with you, Annie. I'm going to ask you this. As a woman, we have to worry about things such as being human trafficking, being stalked, robbed, raped, and possibly killed. And there's a whole movement, the whole Me Too movement that was actually created or generated after several women reported being victimized. Now, Annie, do you feel like just because you're a woman, you're more of a target to be victimized?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yes. I mean, it is. I guess it's just something that's out there that women are expected to be more frail and not want to fight back and easier to control, especially by a man or somebody bigger than her. And I think a lot of women don't stand up for themselves, so it creates this stereotype and this social acceptance of women not standing up for themselves and not being, able to handle themselves. But see, I don't know. I was a volunteer firefighter years ago, and I was able to go through some defense classes and stuff. So it really changed my opinion of myself and changed my life really.
Okay, and there are 4 safety tips that I was able to find. I'm going to go over those that list quickly before I move on to have others answer the same question. So the first safety tip that was suggested was to pay attention to your surroundings, like we mentioned before. The second one is listen to your gut. So if your gut is saying don't go down that street, listen to it. 3 is have a plan. So either if your plan is to try to figure out how I'm going to escape, how I'm going to just arm that person or possibly, get away from them, just have a plan. And then the 4th tip is to fight to escape. So if you're already obviously in direct contact or contact with the person, the suggestion is for you to fight so that you can escape. So I'm going to move on to Tawanda. Do you feel like you're more of a woman? You're more of a target just because you're a woman?
I am not a woman. I am a beast, and I am definitely not a target because I will kill somebody straight up. Real quick, in reference to the tips you said, I remember I went to a self-defense class one time, and they talked about if someone tries to kidnap you, do everything you can to get away while you're there, scream, et cetera, et cetera. And they said you got a better chance of doing that there because if they take you to another spot, you're probably going to get killed. I ditto what you said. The second thing is I think that us as women, especially these days and times, we need to all go to self-defense classes. We need to learn how to fight, karate, and we even need to be at the gun range. Take nothing for granted. We got to be prepared, especially if you're not married. And just really to again, answer your question, I say no because I've always been extremely careful and cautious. And, of course, anybody can still be a target, of course. But I know it can happen, and I'm always watching, and I'm very careful, and I'm always praying, I'm always looking. And I had somebody tell me one time, I worked with a guy at a company years and years ago, and he said, let me ask you a question. I'm like, yeah. He said, are you in the witness protection program or something? And I said, the witness protection program? He was like, yeah, you just come late, leave early, nobody knows your routine, and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, and I'm glad he noticed that. And I did that because I just don't take things for granted. I work with people for so long, and most people think, oh, it's never going to happen. So, yeah, I could be a target, Corinne, but I do everything I can to not be.
Okay. And I like the fact that you mentioned about the routine. That's the one thing that I've always said that no one can really follow my routine because it's so sporadic and so everywhere. And that's how a lot of people get caught up in a way. So they'll, follow their routine, and that's how, they'll say, okay, I know this person's going to be sitting on a bus stop every day at 5, so if I wanted to try to approach them or, try to do something mischief, basically they already know their routine. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you feel like you're a target because you're a woman?
I think that in general, women are targeted more. I myself feel as though I'm probably less of a target than other women because the environment that I grew up in, like, you can't show fear. If you show fear, you become a target. So you just don't show fear. It's better to get angry than to be fearful. So I don't think that I am a target as much as maybe other women would be. There are situations that I've heard where some women are like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, why would you act afraid? Like, you literally just put a target on yourself. So I don't think that I'm, women in general are just going to be targeted more than men. That's just statistics, right? But you can make yourself more of a target by showing your fear. So.
Right. And I always say, like, if, like, one little thing that I do, just I feel like it leads so that I'm not a target is I won't leave my house at nighttime with a purse. Because I feel like that is saying I'm a target, rob me, I have something in here. And I'm going to ask, I know we just got a new, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask the new caller that on really quickly before we end the call. The same question. I believe that's Amanda. Do you feel like you are a victim because you're a woman? Or you're a target to be a victim because you're a woman?
It is Amanda. I think that I have to be more aware as a woman, like aware of my surroundings. I think sometimes, like, I'm not given as many opportunities as maybe somebody that's like me but would be male.
Okay. And I would love to continue going on with the subject. I know that I didn't get to to ask everyone the last question. However, we are coming to the end of the show.